Hey guys, welcome back. It's Josh with the Financial Advisor Car Guy. I'm gonna dive right in this week. If you remember last week's episode, I talked a little bit about my car buying experience with my Mitsubishi Lancer back in 2003. Well, as I finished that video, I decided I'm just gonna roll right into this next one while things are still fresh in my mind. So as you can tell, I'm still standing in the exact same place, wearing the exact same shirt. This is literally moments later, but you're watching it in a week, whereas, yeah, time travel, yay. So let's dive right in. 2003 Mitsubishi Lancer, 2002, I keep saying 3, I bought it in 3. Now, at the time, I'm a college student, not making a ton of money, not, loving the life of a stock car driver. I really wanted to start modding the car. And I immediately joined a forum called Lancer Forums. And it was kind of a really primitive website that I got some good ideas on, right? Guys that had Lancers. So before the Lancer, the lineage or the history of a Lancer was once upon a time, it's a derivative of the Mitsubishi Evo, the Evolution. And it's basically the stock version or the base model version of the Lancer Evolution. And once upon a time, the Evo was based on the Mitsubishi Mirage, which was basically the same car as a Lancer, just the older version, the older model, different name. Same though, like a four-door sedan style car. Okay, so the Evo was based on the Mirage. The Mirage changed to the Lancer. The Evo is now, the premium version of the Lancer. So on this Lancer forum, there was an Evo sub-thread or whatever. And so if you guys are familiar with forums, you basically go to the landing page and then there's all these categories. You can click on any one of them and dive into the topics under those categories. And so I didn't spend a lot of time on this particular Lancer forum because as I'm reading through and getting some pretty good ideas, don't get me wrong, I keep gravitating back to the Evo. And I'm like, man. Now, when I bought that car, I remember walking through the showroom and they had a brand new at the time, 2003, Evo 8. And 2003 may have been the first year of that, but it was bright yellow, such a cool car. And I wanted it, but it was like $30,000, which at the time, 21 years ago, was way too much money for a young guy that, again, working minimum wage or whatever I was working for at the time. It didn't make any sense. I could not afford, however much money a payment was gonna be, $500 and some odd dollars, plus my auto insurance and whatever else. And, my Lancer was like $200 a month, which if you remember last episode when I talked about finding a car to replace the ongoing maintenance costs of my old Blazer, I was getting to a point where every single month I was spending, $200 to $300 on fixing something breaking on my Blazer. So my dad and I had a conversation about it, and I said, yeah, I think it makes sense for me to just go find a car that I can buy for like $200 a month. And anyway, so I did that, and I wanted the Evo, couldn't afford the Evo, but kept gravitating back. And so I found another forum called Evolution M, or Evo M, and I joined it, and there were all these Lancer sub-forums. I'm like, cool, feel like I maybe could fit in here. I'm an Evo fan, but I drive a Lancer. And sure enough, that was what the community was filled with. There were a lot of Evo drivers, but there were also a lot of Lancer drivers that aspired to have an Evo or, model their car to look like an Evo, which is ultimately the route I went. While I was on that forum, I came across a guy that sells Bodykits. And it was a really common upgrade for those early Lancers to buy, Evo 7 or Evo 8 bumpers and, the hood and the spoilers and all the things to make your car look like an Evo, even though a Lancer is more narrow-bodied than an Evo. An Evo has a wide body, the tires are wider, the wheels are wider, so the fenders are wider to accommodate that. And all the suspension stuff is way better, and they're all-wheel drive, where my Lancer was not, it was front-wheel drive. Now, going back in time a little bit, I wanted to kind of figure out how to get my car looking as accurate to an Evo as I could, but on a serious budget. Just like every one of my builds. This is the story of my life, right? Is getting the best bang for my buck. So I get out a piece of notebook paper, binder paper, and I start jotting down a list, right? like Evo headlights, Evo taillights, Evo hood, Evo bumper, Evo spoiler, Evo exhaust, Evo steering wheel, Evo seats, Evo center console, Evo shift knob, you name it, right? Like all of the Evo things, created a list, and then went on eBay, and there was another outfit. I can't recall what it was, but it might have been on that forum, in fact, but there was like a for sale section. Anyway, so I started sifting through eBay and maybe this forum and figuring out what the average sale price of some of this stuff is. So for example, the Evo steering wheel, right? It included the airbag because it was custom to this wheel, and it ranged all over the board. I mean, maybe you could find one for $300 or $1,000. And once upon a time, you know, I mean, $1,000 is still super meaningful today. It's an expensive mod, but $300, you know, 20 years ago, wasn't necessarily easy to come by. And so, you know, I might save a few paychecks and then buy the Evo steering wheel. Then, you know, maybe Evo seats, right? Bucket Recaros out of an Evo, front and back, they fit. They might have been like $1,000 or $1,200 or whatever it is. And so, you know, I had to scrimp and save and sell off stock parts to buy the aftermarket stuff and whatever else. By the time I was done with this car, and again, I couldn't find pictures, I looked. By the time I was done with the car, from 15 feet away, it looked like an Evo. And it looked like an Evo 7. So I'll post a picture here, but an Evo 7 looks a little different than the 8. The 8's a little more rounded in the bumpers, whereas the 7's a little bit more chiseled. The front bumpers have a little bit more definition. The rear wing, again, I would say, you know, the Evo 7 was a little bit more harsh, whereas the Evo 8 softened that up a little bit. There were some very distinct differences, but I really liked the look of the 7, and the Evo 7 was never available in America. So using all the Evo 7 parts created a look on a car that most people maybe recognized as an Evo, but they didn't know exactly what, which was cool. And at the time, it was super cool. Fast and Furious 2, Tokyo, was that? No, it wasn't Tokyo Drift. Fast and Furious 2, or Too Fast, Too Furious was coming out. And the hero car that Paul Walker drove was an Evo 7. And Tyrese drove a second-gen Eclipse convertible Spider. Well, funny enough, I buy my Lancer just before the movie came out. Maybe a year or more before the movie came out. I'm not sure when that movie came out exactly, but I'm modding it to my heart's content. A buddy of mine, in fact, a coworker of my wife's, who's my buddy, he bought a second-gen Eclipse, and same thing. He's like, Josh, I want your help. I want to mod this thing. I want to buy a body kit, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and you know, I whatever. And so I helped him navigate eBay. Same story. I basically helped him do exactly what I was working on for my own car. And he had a little bit more disposable income than I did, so his car cost a little bit more. He bought the V6 version, you know, instead of the 4-banger. He started buying parts, you know, a little bit more faster rate than I was, because he just had a little bit more disposable income. But I would help him install them. I would help him get things going. And we would go to like Friday night car meets, he and I together. And it was super fun. We went and saw Too Fast, Too Furious, my wife and him and myself. And we parked next to each other at the movie theater. We turned on our underglow, which of course we had, very Fast and Furious-esque. And, you know, left the underglow on for the whole movie. And we just thought we were the coolest people in the world. It was so funny to look back and think about that. And then I wonder, like, where did my daughter get it? Yeah, she didn't fall far from the tree. So, you know, the underglow and all that stuff, I give her a hard time about it, but I was super guilty of all this same stuff. You know, body kits galore, big wings, loud sound systems, you name it. You know, I did it 25 years ago. So, you know, where I was going with that is I was trying to do it all on such a tight budget. I met this guy on the forum who sells body kits, and I start getting quotes, and he's got several different styles. He's just a sales manager at a company. And as it turns out, it was bodykits.com. They were a very early adopter of the internet and were able to get a amazing website, like the URL. So Bodykit or bodykits.com. And they don't own it anymore. I actually looked not that long ago. It's a completely different company now. But they are a body kit manufacturer out of Sri Lanka. Now, if you're not familiar with Sri Lanka, it's an island off of India. And shipping was ridiculous. If I ordered a $1,000 body kit, shipping might be another $2,000. So it became very cost ineffective to buy a body kit from this guy. But he had all these different versions of all these different kits, which made the car look incredible. Some were very cool. Now, what I ended up doing was, the business-minded individual that I am reached out to him. And I said, hey, listen, it doesn't make a lot of sense for a young person such as myself to buy one of your body kits. It's just too much money. We cannot afford it. What does it look like to buy in bulk? And what does it look like to ship in bulk to the US? Now, I have no idea what those numbers ended up being. I do not remember. But what ended up happening was he came back to me with a price, and he basically said, if you buy, every 10 kits you buy, I'll throw in an 11th for free. So in my mind, I'm thinking, I just got a free body kit. I'm gonna find 10 other Lancer owners who wanna buy one. And that became my job, if you will, for a very short time. Now, I still was working, I still was a student in college. It was never my job, but it was sort of my side hustle. In the evenings, I'd go on the forum, I'd post them for sale, right? I'd say, I've got, 2 body kits, I've got this style and this style, whatever, who wants to buy one? I went on a different forum, I think I went back to Lancer forums, posted the same kind of thing, but I positioned it in such a way that it was called a group buy. And basically what I was doing was saying, okay, here's what I need from everybody. I need a $500 commitment. Once I have your commitment and we have 10 committed, they're gonna ship and we're gonna get them here, and then I'm gonna drop ship them directly to your front door. And again, I don't recall the logistics of it, but what ended up happening was exactly as I wanted. I got enough pre-orders. I contacted the guy, I said, awesome, here it is, I got it. I ordered a case, if you will, a big cargo box of, I think it was 11 kits, and they shipped them to the port of San Francisco. I drove from Oregon back down to the Bay Area, and I had them trucked from the port into, I think it actually came into Oakland, but I had them shipped to a mailboxes, etc. type of place in the South Bay. I spent an entire day there. I had called ahead and basically told the guy, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to have a large crate delivered to you. I'm going to come with a crowbar and a list of addresses. I'm going to need your assistance to box these huge body kits. I mean, think about the size of a front and back bumper. This was a front bumper, a back bumper, and side skirts. So I explained to the guy and I give him rough dimensions. And so he's like, yeah, I've got cardboard. I can box up 10 kits pretty easily, right? And we're gonna use styrofoam and packing peanuts and bubble wrap and all that stuff. And we'll get them all shipped off, and this is what it's gonna cost you. And I had gotten a kind of a generic quote earlier on, so I knew approximately how much I was gonna need to charge each person in and above what the cost of the body kit was. But because I was buying them in bulk, the body kit wasn't what the retail value was. So most of these guys, just round numbers, most of these guys, if the kit was 1,000 and shipping was 200 or 300, because I bought so many kits, I was able to not sell them for 1,000 a piece. Maybe I was able to give them to them for 800 or whatever it was. So now they're paying 800 plus 300 for shipping. They're paying 1,100 shipped to their door instead of 1,000 plus $2,000 to ship it from Sri Lanka or whatever else. So these guys thought they were just getting a screaming deal. And again, I'm keeping kit number 11 for myself. I'm basically turning my time into a body kit. I spent my own money out of pocket to drive down to California, maybe $100 in fuel or whatever. Now back then it was nowhere near $100 in fuel. But we'll call it $100 in fuel and maybe a day of work of prying open a huge wooden crate, dismantling, sorting, boxing, wrapping, all the stuff, 10 body kits. I had to fit the 11th body kit into my Lancer. So I had the passenger seat laid back. I had the trunk, the back seats folded down. I had a bumper I'm trying to remember this. I think the back bumper and the side skirts, I loaded in through the trunk, so they were partially into the back seat because the seats were folded down. And then the front bumper was bigger and bulkier, and it had, I believe it had a grill built into it, whereas the factory car, the grill's attached to the hood, so it changed the look a little bit. I'm drawing a little bit of a blank, but basically that bumper was wrapped around my driver's seat. I put it in from the passenger front, laid the front seat back down, and kind of had to finagle it in there. And so I'm sitting in the car driving, no passengers, nothing. I think I had a backpack with my clothes in it. Literally, I stayed with a buddy down there, and that was about the extent. But long and short of it was I got home with a free body kit, and I was ecstatic. So that was something that I did. I did that several different times, different things. Body kits were a cool one because that was an expensive purchase, and it was really cool to get one at no cost. I only had to pay for paint and installation, which ended up being okay. Not too much time later, they released a new front bumper and a hood upgrade. And I think the deal for that one, because they could pack it much smaller, it was only a hood, which they could stack flat, and front bumper. I think I had to buy three to get the fourths for free, something like that. I didn't buy that many, but same exact story. I ended up listing, I think, the 3 pair, sold them relatively quickly, ordered them Sri Lanka, shipped them. They actually shipped them to my house this time. I didn't have to go to California, but I get them, I parcel them out, and I want to say that 2 of the 3 were actually people right here in the Northwest. I think people just drove to me and picked them up, which was super convenient. I think I only had to ship out 1, and then I kept 1 for myself. And ultimately, that was the way I stayed. It was an Evo 7 hood, Evo 7 front bumper, and then kind of a cool looking Evo 7 8 hybrid bumper on the rear, and then Evo 7 and 8 side skirts, which I think are identical. The car didn't have side skirts, so having anything there was better than nothing at all. Of course, I did wheels, tires. I ended up later buying a carbon fiber trunk lid and a carbon fiber Evo 7 wing, which was awesome. Nobody had those. I saw those on a forum and I had to have them, so same thing. I just saved my money and bought those carbon parts. Because of the way that this front bumper and new hood were built, I never did find a carbon front hood that would work with the bumper. Fast forwarding to today, if this were the situation, I could have just wrapped it with carbon, but automotive wrap was not a thing 20 plus years ago. It was not even a thing. So it was paint or nothing. So paint was it. I had a painted front bumper and hood, carbon fiber trunk lid and spoiler, and it drove me mad. I really wanted to fix that, but I never did, never could. And it's okay. I mean, it's okay. But yeah, that was the one, I'll call it regret, that I had of that car that didn't get done the way I wanted it to. I really wanted to have that carbon hood, and I just couldn't find one that would work with the Evo 7 front bumper that I had and wanted and all that. When we transitioned to the interior, there were, my car was non-turboed. They did have some aftermarket turbo kits, and a lot of guys on these forums did them. It was a little 2-liter engine, 4-cylinder, small. I did do an aftermarket downpipe, full cat back exhaust, cat delete, straight pipe it, and cold air intake, all that stuff. I mean, all the bolt-on mods that are relatively easy and simple, but no turbo, no nitrous, none of that crazy stuff. But yeah, just the basic stuff. But it helped. That car had like 120 horsepower stock. Adding the intake and all the exhaust stuff with the straight pipes and the headers and all that stuff. I never dynoed it, but the guys online would say it would get closer to 150. In a small lightweight car, it's not too bad. It never felt slow. I didn't go big brakes or anything like that, which I did later on other cars, but I kept all the suspension. I did lower the suspension, but I didn't get new shocks or anything or struts. I just went with lowering springs by a company called Progressive. They were Progressive springs, and that was all the rage. So there was a period of time where Progressive, I mean, and now you've got like Ibach and all these other ones, but Progressive built their springs based on the load of an Evo. And so when you put them on a Lancer, the Lancer, for whatever reason, sat lower. And so I wanted them because I wanted the lowness of the look of that. And so it got my car as low as I could. I think it lowered it like 2 inches or something like that all the way around, which is insane for springs. Usually coils might get you there or air ride, but lowering springs, that's a whole nother animal. And it didn't really sacrifice comfort. I felt like it still rode really well. If I hit a pothole or something, maybe I'd feel it a little more jarring, but for the most part, I didn't mind that. It was really kind of, and I loved the look. The more I drove it, the more it settled in, I felt like, at least, initially. And yeah, I think when it was all said and done, I had probably lowered the car about 2 inches. I did have in that car, this was the first time anybody I knew, none of my friends had this, but it was a touchscreen 7-inch LED or LCD flip out screen in the radio spot. It had a single DIN radio, and this is again 2003 and 4, so you think back 20 plus years, nobody had touchscreen radio. I mean, that's like a Tesla thing now, but nobody had screens in their cars. And so this was very, very early in that scene, and I want to say it was a JVC, might have been a Pioneer, but either way, it was very high end. It was north of $1,000, and I was able to take part of the Bodykits stuff and trade it towards buying this in-dash radio that I had to have. I did end up with Recaros, Evo 8 Recaros, so the interior of my car did look like an Evo. I did end up with an Evo steering wheel, shift knob. Now my car was an automatic, whereas Evos are 6-speed manuals. So it was like a replica knob. It looked just like the Evo, but it was not. It was for an automatic. And so that was okay, but the steering wheel worked. I bought some of the dash panels because in the Evo they're stainless and mine were like really junky plastic. So I swapped out all the stainless parts I swapped out my junky parts for the better ones, and then resold everything, right? All the stock parts got sold. Anything I didn't sell ended up going back on the car later in life when I sold the car, or they were included in the sale. It was just sitting in the trunk type of thing. I had built with a buddy of mine, actually a good buddy of mine, built a huge box for the trunk that was custom fit. I'm gonna take a step back so you guys can kind of picture with me. It had, so if you imagine looking at the trunk of your car, okay? Behind the taillights, like here and here, right? If you're looking into the trunk, there's the inside of the taillights here and here. We had positioned some MDF board in those corners, and we cut it to wedge it in there as tight as we could, right? To block any airflow. And so we built these panels and we sunk 10-inch subwoofers into each one. And then what we did was use MDF board again and cut it to the shape of my floor in the trunk, set that in there. And what that did was it held those wedged into the corner, right? Then I mounted my amp, my capacitor, all my other bypass stuff, whatever, to that MDF, put little legs all the way around the perimeter, cut another piece of MDF the size of the now what's left opening. It fit on there perfectly. Again, nice and snug, so it held the subs into the corners. And then what we did was we drew and then cut the Mitsubishi Diamond really big in the middle, okay? Then I went to Home Depot, and actually I did this all at the same time. So while I was at Home Depot buying the MDF board, I bought plexiglass. I mounted plexiglass under the Mitsubishi Diamond. And then I put blue neon lights under, kind of outside of where the amp and the capacitor and everything were. So outside of the perimeter of the Mitsubishi Diamond, you couldn't see the LED or the neon tube strips, but I mounted those inside there. So when you pop the trunk at night, you'd see a glowing blue Mitsubishi Diamond with, it was a chrome amp inside there. And I think it was an MTX amp and capacitor, and then I had MTX subs. And at the time, I mean, they were fantastic. That thing was incredible. It was car show ready. Oh, and then on top of that, once it was built, we took it all apart and I carpeted everything. So it looked factory. It was carpeted the exact same with like speaker box carpet, but it was the exact same color as the factory carpet in the car. So the only unfortunate thing is if I ever got a flat tire, I'd have to remove all that stuff out to get to the spare. But it was never once a problem. Never once did I ever get a flat tire in that car. And so it was never an issue. But the thing looked sweet. And that was really, I think, to me, my most favorite part of modifying that car, because that was something I truly built. It wasn't something that I bought and then installed, right? There was no plans for that. In my mind, I knew what I wanted. My buddy and I cut it all out and test fit everything and made it work. And then once we knew it worked and it was good, we took it apart, carpeted it, put it all back together, and the thing was amazing. Someday I hope to rediscover. I had a couple physical pictures of it as well as digital ones, and if I ever find those photos, I'll absolutely post them on here. I wish I did. But what I ended up doing was, once I had it built, when I took it out to carpet it, I traced another set onto some leftover MDF that I had. I ended up, once mine was all said and done, taking pictures of it and posting it on this on the forum. And I had, I think it was 2, maybe it was 3 people actually want to buy. And so because I had traced out the pattern, I was able to replicate it very simply, right? So I just take my skill saw or jigsaw and recut everything. So I've got a second set. I can carpet it real easy. It was just incredible. And so I ended up selling a couple sets of that, and that helped me recoup money, I think, towards my Recaros, I think is the way that worked. But man, just crazy stuff. Just super fun car. It was really what I feel like, looking back, catapulted me towards, modifying cars and building cars. Because that car, my Blazer, I mean, we can talk about that another time. There were things that I did to it. I installed the sound system. I tinted the windows. Whatever. But basic stuff, the things ordinary people do to ordinary cars. This Lancer was the first time I really got into it, and, fiberglassed for my first time, and painted things for the first time, and really built this sub box for the first time. I was discovering how to take things apart and put them back. It was the first time I had ever done any exhaust work. That was the first time I ever used lowering springs. That car was really a learning platform for me, and I don't take that for granted. I just feel like I'd kind of forgotten. And anyway, thanks for watching that, because we're watching this, right? Because it's been fun for me to sort of relive that. And ultimately, I sold that car to get out of the payment. I had that car for 2.5 years. My wife, as you remember, my wife was with me when I bought it. We weren't married yet, but since at that point we had gotten engaged and ready to get married. And so I was trying to eliminate any debt. We were trying to buy a house. I wanted no debt, so I sold the car. I didn't make money on it. I think I sold it for what I owed, but it had depreciated a lot. And if you look at those Mitsubishi Lancers today, you can pick one up for like $1,000. They're just not worth anything. But I had a ball playing with that car. And when I sold it, I think it only had like 30,000 miles. And so I had it for 2.5 years, or whatever the timeline was. I guess if I bought it in 2003, we got married in 2005. So maybe I had it 2 years. But all that to say, right, it was just one of those deals where I had a ball building it the way I wanted it. I rewired some headlights, I had, if you guys remember, Altezza taillights, kind of just super cool stuff at the time. It dates it dramatically though. This is like old school stuff now. Everything's LED and fancy now. I don't know, but that was probably the start of my modding abilities, and that was a great test mule. I don't regret any of it. I wouldn't change any of it, other than I wish I had carbon fiber wrap back then. But other than that, thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, hit that notification bell, and of course, mostly remember, may every investment you make be a good one. Until next time.